So, Dave, thanks for joining our podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is a new episode of the Hackflix podcast. I'll probably tell you about Hackflix, but you will get to know more about it a bit later. So, this was not really planned in a way, and I'm like, I was listening to your story, your journey. A few hours ago, and I felt like, oh, I want to get that person. I want to talk to him a bit further on the podcast. So, can you tell us a little bit about you in terms of your career, your role today, and what got you into building a company?
Sure. So, I'm going to go way back, but I'm not going to stay there very long.
Okay.
So, when I was 9 years old, my dad brought a computer home. I started programming on it because I thought it was a video game. Years later, when I was in college, I took a programming course because the American football coach was my advisor and said, this is supposed to be an easy class.
Okay.
I said, I like computers, I'll do that. And the professor said something about when he worked at IBM, and I was like, whoa, you can make money doing this?
Okay.
So I thought I was just playing video games. And then, got deep into programming and network management, then started working before I was out of college. I was an IT manager, network administrator type, then systems administrator. Then I moved into what's called a clinical analyst at a hospital, which it's a bit like programming and a bit like technical support, all rolled into one for the healthcare providers within a hospital.
And the programming part, reading a bit your profile, you were using Delphi Borland or something?
Yeah, Borland's Delphi.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So
that is way back.
So Java was released while I was in college.
Yeah. So for people listening, Java was released in 1995, I believe. Yeah, that's way back.
Yeah. So I remember when we were waiting for Windows to be released. So I'm from back in the DOS days. In fact, at one point I was in my parents' den floor with hex debug printouts.
Wow.
With a highlighter trying to write a bit of software at one point. But then I went to the hospital as a clinical analyst, and that brought me here to Ireland because the software we use is not mainstream. So it's hard to find people with that specific skill set.
Okay.
All along I was always developing tools. So we need this to do this thing. Well, I can go through the procurement process or just purchase it. Just build it myself.
Yeah.
And it was just more fun to build it.
Yeah, we can buy it for you, but you can also build it. And then you went for the hack thing. It's a game. Let me play with it. Nice.
And then I went to be a full-time sole developer or the lead developer at a marketing agency where I met Julie, my co-founder.
Okay.
So we worked in the same dynamic that we currently have.
It was already in healthcare.
It was a healthcare marketing agency.
Okay.
And I wrote software, and she found clients. And then she went away to be the head of global digital for a global pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
So she's a rock star in pharmaceutical marketing.
World. Yeah.
And we stayed in touch, and I went to be a senior principal site reliability engineer at Symantec, the software security company.
I think I remember that's when I met you, 2016. You were still working at Symantec,
Yeah, so
nice.
I was probably almost finishing up about that point.
Yeah, indeed.
So our goal was we would do consultancy and then figure out what the product was going to be. We knew that long term we didn't want to constantly only serve clients, because while you're serving clients, you can never build an asset portfolio. You can only make as much money as work you can do.
Yeah, indeed.
So with a product, at some point, hopefully,
yeah.
it gets to where the product makes more money than.
So you didn't really have that pain point that you and then you were like, okay, we're going after that pain point. You were mostly, let's start this consultancy thing, and then we see how we grow and how we deal with customer, which problem they have, and then build a product on top of that. Was that your
it was
your
somewhat
process?
like that. We had a few ideas. We were interested in the privacy space and social media related to privacy.
Okay.
We worked on something there. We worked on something that was a bit of a similar to a social listening type of tool. So it was all focused around content and marketing and other areas like that. And then very early when we started full time, we realized we just needed to focus on healthcare, which was where we knew what we were doing.
Yeah, indeed. That's actually when I read and you were introducing yourself, I realized that what you're doing today, and especially now that I know you met your co-founder as part of your career, like what you're doing today was just you were preparing that for years, which is actually interesting in terms of like people using your product and looking back at your background and like those people know what they're doing. They've been doing that for many years, and it's kind of reassuring.
Indeed. So we are part of the NDRC Accelerator program here in Dublin. So what was interesting is the very beginning of the NDRC, they teach you how to do better user interviews and how to make sure you're building the right product in the right way.
Okay.
And we didn't really learn much new. We did find a number of things that we could have done better, but because Julie had so much experience actually selling to doctors who are our users and selling to pharmaceutical companies because she was our customer.
Yeah.
The knowledge in the space that she already had was, great. I mean, we couldn't have asked for anything better. Once we learned to do those user interviews a little bit less with our product as the focus and more of discovering the pain points of the users, the interviews went better.
Okay.
And then I have that weird I consider myself 51% ops and 49% dev.
Yeah.
So I'm that original DevOps, which I built it and I deployed it and I supported it.
Yeah, but then there is a part that I'm missing right there.
Mm-hmm.
There is 1% missing. So you say 50%.
51%.
51% up. So there is a part I'm still missing there. So you're probably doing something around 150% because there is another 50% that I'm missing in part of the equation. You're running a company.
That's true.
Yeah. So there is a way you need to split that percentage and have it
No,
equal.
it's 150%.
Okay.
That's what startup life is. It's even though I knew it wasn't going to be easy. It's so much harder than I ever could have imagined, but it's also more impactful in my life than I could have ever imagined. I swear, I guess we're 2 years and a bit now.
Yeah. In which sense, the impactful part? What
so
do you mean by?
In what I've learned, I could not have become as valuable as a person, a CTO, just an employee or an owner, or however my career goes from here. I could not be in the position of growth that I've had with 2 doctorates in something.
Okay.
The learning, the speed at which you learn while building a startup is insane. But that's also why it's so hard.
I can relate to that, and it is important to tell our auditors you are actually a CTO of, like we didn't mention that at first because I cannot let you introduce that, but part of I missed that part, but obviously you're CTO of a company called Medit.
Yes.
It's actually 2 companies combined.
So we have a company that we started, 115 Digital X Ventures. So the whole thing was we give 115%. So
Yeah.
we came up with that. That was the company. And then the 115 Healthcare is where we do our consultancy.
Yeah.
And then Medit was the product. So Medit, we are curating the medical web for healthcare providers. So we find all the journals, blogs, websites, podcasts, videos, anything a healthcare provider would care about.
Okay.
Pull it down and use machine learning to categorize and classify that. And then based on a user's preferences and behaviors, deliver the best quality, the right content for them so that they don't have to spend as much time
Indeed.
searching for that content.
Okay. And so you mentioned that for about 2 years now, you've been basically building this product, and at some point you had to make technical decisions. So I want to dive a little bit into that because I think for our audience it's important. Like that is where they want to understand the decision-making process. So, what is the stack behind Medit?
Sure. So our database is MongoDB.
Yeah.
We have node.js as our API and also our analytics API.
Okay.
We have Python for the machine learning. We also have a Python API that is used between the regular API and the machine learning models.
Okay.
We have some elements of Amazon's SQS. Everything runs in Kubernetes.
Okay.
That makes it much easier to support without having to deal with hosts that will go down because Kubernetes just restarts them.
Indeed.
We're currently using the Azure Search Console.
So let me quickly interrupt you right there.
Sure.
Saying that's a lot of things.
Yes, it is.
And you actually put all of them together, or you have a team?
So we have a team.
Okay.
So there's myself, my data engineer. We have some iOS developers and now some Android developers.
Okay.
And then our user interface, user experience.
Okay, but did you start with a team, or you were bootstrapping the entire thing? I mean, building everything by
So
yourself?
it started with just me. And I was building, I guess that was actually the first year. So I built all the infrastructure, but at that point it was VMs. I think we were still using Docker, but we had VMs on DigitalOcean.
Okay.
Being part of the NDRC program, we got access to the Microsoft
vouchers,
so
these kind of.
So it made it a lot easier to use AWS and Azure. So we moved things over there because then it was free hosting, whereas I knew that it was going to get too expensive because of the distance between the beginning and when I knew we'd be able to monetize the product.
Yeah, but then at some point you mentioned that back then, meaning 2 years ago, you had to make technical decision about shall we go iOS native or Android native versus React native or any tool like that. What was that? And you didn't choose a React native. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
I really wanted to use React Native. I really did. I mean, I think it's a solid, framework to build on. But there were a few things. We have a very data intensive product.
Yeah.
So I knew that something like, and part of this could be my own lack of experience with it, something like storing gigs of information in something like Redux was never going to be a good experience.
Okay.
We knew that there were a number of other elements that were closer to the native software stack that we would need.
But because you also had experience building iOS app back then, so
So as badly as I wanted to use React Native, we just couldn't do it. And also, I was worried about how much influence Facebook has over React Native. And this was before they've updated the terms of service or the licensing.
That I understand that period where they had that little star saying whatever,
But even beyond the ownership elements, if you have an army of engineers and you need something to work a specific way, you send that army of engineers to go make it happen.
Yeah, indeed.
When you're yourself and maybe a freelancer or two, and React Native didn't do what you needed, what are you going to do? Fork it and then hope that your fork doesn't diverge too far away from the main branch?
I can understand that.
So I couldn't justify it. And I knew a couple of other people within the NDRC accelerator that did use React, and they had some of the problems I thought they would have. It seemed to work out for them, but they didn't have the same data issues that we were having. So it was the least bad decision I could make.
Okay.
Which is how a lot of it goes.
It was also safe bet going iOS, knowing with your background.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as you mentioned, it delayed the entire Android part of the app.
Android has been released for about a week now.
Okay.
And iOS has been was released over a year ago.
Okay.
So it's not that we were building them both at the same time, because I didn't have Android skills. I mean, I could hack together some Android stuff, but it's not going to be built the Android way.
Yeah,
it's going to look like an iOS developer, or actually it's more like a back-end developer tried to write an Android app.
So how did you go about finding developers to join your team?
So our data engineer, who actually joined a little bit later, but I had worked with her before, and knew her as the type of person that I'd hire no matter what. She was not specifically a data engineer when we hired her, but she had been spending a lot of time investigating machine learning and learning about it, going to meetups and projects and things like that. But she was already a really solid developer and a great team member.
Okay.
So that was easy. I hired a couple of freelancers before that for the iOS development. We went down one path with Upwork. That didn't work out as well. I did find another node.js developer to help with the API.
Yep.
And he was great. That one was luck. I really didn't do I just did a bit of a test project with him and then moved forward. Then there was another guy who is still our senior iOS developer. I put out a call on Twitter, LinkedIn, and a few other places, just saying we were looking for people.
Oh, wow.
And then I looked through the responses, and then I gave a number of people just a 5-minute conversation on Skype. I said, 5-minute conversation. I want to make sure we can communicate, make sure that you're the right type of person for the team. And then after that, we'll do a coding interview. And so that narrowed out, or that eliminated a number of people because it was hard to communicate, or they didn't really grasp the depth and gravity of the product we were building.
Yeah.
Then we did the coding
interview. Yeah.
And what I did was I gave them a simple problem of, I want you to build, so this was iOS. So build me an iOS app right here while I'm watching. It has 3 fields. Underneath it, you have a multiplication or an addition button. And then it totals those 3. So this is super simple, but I want you to build it like it's a production application.
Okay.
So this is what you would give to me when we are working that you would expect.
And you were watching live.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that adds up a bit of pressure in a way.
Well, I said, and I don't expect you to be perfect. I'm happy for you to search for anything, ask me as many questions as you want. This isn't about getting a complete solution. This is about us working together. Any question you have, ask.
Okay.
And I would ask little bits as they went along. And, I was looking for things like, how do they structure the code? Are they using bad variable names? Are they using arrays because there's 3? So it might extend beyond 3. So will they use an array, or will they use 3 different variables?
Okay.
It's addition or multiplication. So you can basically make that pretty reusable.
Yeah,
if there were subtraction and division, that'd be a little different.
Yeah, indeed.
Are they writing it where it would be testable? Are they sticking everything in the controller?
Okay. Nice.
So I was able to, in a 5-minute conversation, and then in a couple of cases 10 minutes, be able to say, okay, let's stop for a second. Now remember, this is production. Is this how you would write production? Yes. Okay, you would definitely put all the logic in this area.
It was also about communication.
Yeah.
How can you express the problem or the solution you're going to build and understand a way like people can understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and the biggest thing about it was I tried my absolute best to make sure that it didn't feel like a pressure situation.
Okay.
That it was about, we're just working together. It's almost like we're just doing peer.
Yeah,
paired programming.
Programming. Yeah.
I mean, that's a little different because in paired programming, the person typing isn't supposed to be doing the programming.
Indeed.
But that worked really well.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it was part that I did the right things, but also part luck. I mean, Raj is great. He's got an office where our other guys are. Our other programmers.
Okay.
So he happened to be in India, and because he knew people, we just keep growing that.
So
area.
you have a distributed team, right? Like, stuff there.
So we have daily stand up with all the team. We have everyone in that team, in that group that happens to reside in India.
Okay.
As they're full members of the team. They're in all the meetings. They help make decisions. It's not like we haven't outsourced the development.
Yeah, they're part of the company.
Exactly.
Okay, talking about the company, how do you then manage as a CTO? So the 150%, like 51 here, 49 here, and then the other 50 managing people. How do you go about that? Is it something you were already doing in your career, and how do you cope with people expectation as software engineer or
So I've always found mentoring as an interesting and fun thing.
Okay.
Because I learn more when I'm helping other people learn.
Yeah.
So that part was easy.
Got it.
And I've been very lucky with most of the people that have become part of the product team. I just got lucky and haven't had severe issues, but also I try to make sure that I listen a lot, make sure that they have everything they need. That's the most important thing I do is make sure that the team can do their job. It's great when I'm writing code and shipping it, but if I've got 3 people who can't ship code because of me, that's not good. So,
true.
I kind of make sure that is the number one thing that I focus on, is making sure that the team can work. Then, I guess number one is make sure that the site, that our infrastructure doesn't die.
Okay.
Then make sure that the team has everything.
Yeah.
And then make sure the team has everything they need, whether that's support, help making decisions, software tools, just whatever to move forward.
Nice.
And one of the hardest bits of all of this that I still don't have right is our working process. So our users are doctors, and doctors have high standards. So there aren't MVPs when you're trying to ship to a doctor. It has to be good.
Yeah.
So
it is called MVP in a way, but that it has to be a pretty high quality piece of software already.
So even though we try to work in an agile fashion, it still can feel very waterfally at points because we have large chunks of feature sets that have to be built before we can release those. So I'm constantly trying to make that right.
Okay.
I still don't have it.
So how about your testing process? Because most of people will ask me, I don't know about iOS and Android, but most of people will ask me when we're giving trainings, like, what is the best coverage? How do you call that? Test coverage percentage you need to have in your code base. Do you test your UIs? Do you test XYZ layer? And sometimes doing raw front-end development, I probably don't test UIs, because I believe that UIs are that ever-changing piece of software where you're like, I want to make sure that we want to test this A/B thing, A/B testing, and you want to try a lot of things, which makes it difficult. I met with people at Netflix a few years ago. They were saying, dude, we have millions of changes going every other day, so we cannot really test the UI part, but make sure that logic it's well tested. To me, it makes sense. But then, as in some cases, people will say, how about a health-focused app? When you know that the wrong button can lead to this catastrophe in this kind of stuff. Are you part of that group of people that needs to also test UI and make sure that everything is working at every single layer?
So currently our unit testing is okay in the API. I do hope to improve that. Our unit testing in iOS was good, but we've had some issues where it's caused problems because so much of the actual usage is based on core data, which is the database based on SQLite or SQLite, depending on how you like to pronounce it. And it's very hard to test that without adding a lot of overhead. But what we do have a solid set of, I don't know if you could, we call them smoke tests, but I guess you could call it integration tests.
Integration tests.
It's, Postman tests that are automatically run. So you commit code, you merge to master for the API. It then builds the Docker container, pushes it up to our Docker registry. Then our Slack bot pulls that down because it gets a webhook. Installs it into test, deploys it, automatically runs those Postman tests, and then lets us know if they passed or failed. And then from there we can tell the
you
Slack
actually
bot
seems to have a pretty solid CI process in a way to
for
also
the API. I had a number of times we've tried to make the UI testing in Xcode for iOS work, and it hasn't worked yet. And we don't have a web app yet. So no testing in that. One of the things that I'm really interested in though, is testing and alerting based on actual results and metrics as opposed to.
So that's interesting.
It's called it's something indicator versus objective, SLI versus SLO, I think is how it's often discussed. Basically, instead of if I do X, do I get Y? It's normally I get Y. And now this new code, do I still have? So if I add these changes, am I getting less? So like I think it was in the Lean Startup book about their buy button turned white, and so they got 0 purchases over a period of time. And so it was obvious that it needed to be reverted. So I'm leaning towards how we might go about.
So isn't it called kind of behavior related test, something like that?
Well, it's we typically get this number of this type of event. Does that number change when we ship new releases? So
probably
if we send out
result-driven tested,
so that's the way I'm leaning, as opposed to the
test that UI.
It does this UI have that? It's more about the in production. If we release a canary build or a canary portion, so if we've got 10% on V2, are we getting 10% strange results, or are we getting typical results? So that's what I'm leaning towards, but it's still an evolving process.
Okay, nice. So I have a few more questions for you. So you have you already had a long career, and you still have like many years to go. But if you were to advise the younger you about going from being an employee at all these companies you worked for and building your own company, what would you tell to yourself a few years ago?
I would probably go around the same path, but I would tell myself to save every single penny from the day I started work until I did the startup, because no matter how much runway you have, you need more.
Yeah, that is a good one. That is a good one.
Yeah, take every penny that you spend in a year and double or triple it and have that in savings, because
One day
it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
And it's going to be extremely mentally hard. Just, there's no safety net. Like, I know that I am even more employable now than I was before. But, there's only so much that you can do between some unexpected emergency happening and then disaster. So have as much runway as you could possibly get.
Okay. And I don't know, not everyone has the luxury. Let's not call that a luxury, but in a way, the chance to be working in the field that you know. How does that serve you in a way, like what you've done in the past till this point?
So I understand a lot of the needs and terminology in the healthcare field that some might not, but for me, it's not as important as for Julie.
Yeah, okay.
So her understanding the space at such a deep level is probably the most important thing.
Okay, got it.
Because, software can be built for pretty much any industry, and if you are empathetic enough to try to consider your users and spend time thinking about them, then knowing some of the terms isn't necessarily as important. I think it's actually, it probably would be even more important for my data engineer if she had known the space and understood how journals work, medical journals, the namings, the types of classifications and things like that. She had to spend a lot of time learning it.
Yeah.
So having that knowledge beforehand could have helped her. I didn't actually have that because it was a very specific area of healthcare that most people who aren't doing basically something like what we're doing would know, or an actual healthcare provider.
Nice. Cool. If you, how do you stay up to date with the latest technology, and how do you make sure that your team also keep up with the pace of the changes?
I used to spend a lot of time on trying to keep up with all the things. I don't do that as much anymore. It's because when something comes up, I spend the time to investigate it and research it a bit deeper. A lot of YouTube videos. So if a specific thing comes up, I watch a YouTube video on it because I watch them on double speed. Then I get the audio and the video at twice the speed. So two dimensions of input, and then do a bit of prototyping along with that.
Okay.
So that's my technique, but really I wait for an actual problem and try to go solve it, but also keep my ear open a bit. But yeah, I used to try to keep up with everything. It's just not possible.
Okay. So that is probably one of the advice you will give to younger self, saying, yeah, you want to keep up with everything, because that's a lot of people are struggling with that. What should I read? Should I watch that video? Should I do that React? Should I do that iOS? And then you're like, what's the problem? Which problem are you solving?
Having that broad base of knowledge was actually useful for me before I started, but now it's impossible to keep up with. So there are benefits to both. You know, if you have a deep understanding of one language, that's great. If you have a pretty deep understanding of two languages, that's probably better, especially if they're different.
Yeah, so that's a very good one.
An object-oriented in Python or Ruby. Or well, I mean, both Python and Ruby can be object-oriented, but they're really, I guess Ruby's mostly object-oriented. But anyway, if you understand a bit of object-oriented, a bit of functional, a bit of procedural programming, knowing the benefits and the techniques of those can help make sure or help you understand what you're working in day to day a bit better, I believe. That's a good
advice. So anyone, do you have anyone in your network that influenced you or that has been of influence in your career or everything you've been doing so far? If you were to give me like one name, who would be that person?
I couldn't give you one name.
Okay.
It's everybody.
Okay.
Every single person that I've worked with in some way or another. I learn from juniors. I learn from mid-level.
Yeah.
I learn from senior people.
Okay.
Everybody has something. You know, a person may ask a question because they don't understand something in a way that makes some topic that I thought I had a grasp on just makes it click even more for me.
Okay.
Or, you know, trying to explain it. When you teach something, you learn it better than if you're just learning it.
Yeah.
So
nice.
You know, I've worked with a lot of people that have brought value to me. I'd say one of the most interesting things though is I think the best work I've ever done has been while working with Julie. So not just this, but she always makes me better.
Nice.
Just because she's got high standards and, you know, I want to
you
live up to what she's the hardest working person I know.
Yeah.
So
nice. I need to mention for people listening that Julia is actually the CEO of Medit.
Yeah. My co-founder, CEO, and like I said before, we work together at the marketing agency.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So we were talking about, that's going to be my last question.
Okay.
We were talking about the 150%. And I'm about to add another 10 or 20. So next to your busy life as a CTO and running a company, you also started a podcast, right?
Indeed.
So can you tell us more about your podcast?
Sure. So it's called CTO and Co-Founder Talk with Dave Albert.
Okay.
So it's about startups, technology. Basically, I use it as a way to contact people like yourself and others who are doing interesting things in the tech and startup space. And like this, how often you get to sit across from somebody for 30, 45, an hour, and they don't pull out their phone? That doesn't happen.
No.
But if you're recording a podcast, it seems to work. But also, it's having the discussions with people.
You see? That's a good one. That's a very good one. Yeah.
It's about having discussions with people just about the thing that I'm already interested in. So, like I said, I didn't know programming and computers were a job. I'm still just playing video games now.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a very good one. Yeah. Okay, Dave. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I think in a few minutes, as you mentioned, myself, I'm learning that thing, and I'm enjoying every single bit of it. Meeting people, trying to understand their journey, and I know they're busy. I know you're busy, and spending just 30 minutes, an hour with those people I'm doing my own MBA. I'm doing my own researches and PhD, how you want to call it. So thanks for being part of that journey for me. And thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Let's wrap that up.